I'm Kevin Andrews. I'll be moderating this conversation that we have today. And I hope that you all will have the opportunity to learn a little bit about these four wonderful educators. We're really happy. I'm going to turn off my video at the moment so you can really concentrate on them and not me, because I think they're the ones that are really good looking out there. So I'm so happy to see them. We're going to talk this morning about the challenges of success, the successes and opportunities of reimagining schools. And these are some very creative educators that we're going to kick off this conversation with, and I'm sure they'll have a lot to say. So as we begin, I'm going to have them actually introduce themselves, take a couple of minutes to introduce themselves, say a little bit about their schools and their current model, but also don't forget to give your website so you can learn more about them down the road. So we're going to start with our host from Prospect Hill Academy with Dr. Angela Allen. And then we'll go from there to Kate, Tabiti, and Craig. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. I am delighted to be here and joined by my esteemed, caring, committed colleagues who, like me, lead and successfully serve mostly Black and Brown children. To that end, at PHA, I am the head of school, and we are unapologetically college preparatory, restorative practice oriented, and an inclusive, caring school community. We serve students from grades K to 12. At PHA, we like to say K to college. While we have many, many data points that typically are framed as the odds against our students, our most impressive data point is even with the odds, 95% of our students go on to college and 72% actually stay in college. So we are confident that we will be able to weather our way through these twin pandemics that we are currently facing, although it is mighty, mighty challenging. To that end, I think the last thing that I would share in my intro is we are operating a wraparound services model where we have our most vulnerable students across the district, across the campuses in our buildings. In addition to that, the majority of our students are working through a remote learning model. And that, again, is K to 12. It is our hope when it is safe to do so, and we have some stability in the virus and the moving metrics that accompany the virus, that we can bring our students back in for in-person learning in January. I'm gonna bounce it to Kate.
Thank you, Angela. I'm so excited to be here and so grateful to you and Prospect Hill Academy for hosting this forum today. It's really exciting, as you said, to be with this wonderful group of educators and leaders and people I consider to be friends. I am Kate Scott. I am the executive director of the Neighborhood House Charter School in Dorchester, where I have worked under the leadership of Kevin Andrews, our fabulous moderator, who gave me my start at Neighborhood House a little over 24 years ago, where I started as a fourth grade teacher, and upon his retirement in 2013, took over as executive director. Neighborhood House serves now over 800 students in pre-K through 12th grade, but for the first 20 years of our history, we were a K through 8 school and about 400 students. So we have gone through a period of rapid growth over the last 4 years. We just recently celebrated our 25th anniversary, and we're thrilled that this spring we'll be graduating our first class of seniors, which has been an incredibly long-held dream for us, and the realization of a vision that originated back when Kevin was the leader of our school. So that is super exciting. And in terms of our model right now, we are what we call Remote Plus. So like at Prospect Hill Academy, the majority of our instruction is being delivered with students remotely. But in September and October, we were thrilled to be able to offer a program of outdoor community building activities where our students would come to campus 1 day a week outdoors to interact with their peers and their teachers and build the community that is so important for a successful remote experience. And now we are serving a small number of students at our 2 campuses for what we're calling supervised remote learning. And this is for our students who were struggling most to access their full education remotely. And so they're coming in, and while they are still learning in, with, over the computer, they're doing so under the guidance and oversight of a caring adult within our buildings. And that's serving a relatively small percentage of our students across both campuses, but we hope to be able to expand it. Thank you.
Tabiti?
Tabiti, I think you're on mute.
Wouldn't be a Zoom meeting if that didn't happen. So I was listening to you, Kate, and wondering if one of your caring adults could come and supervise me here at my house as I'm working from home. I could use that additional support. I'm not going to lie. My name is B.T. Brown. I'm the head of school at Codman Academy Charter Public School. Proud head of school there. Like Kate, a long time in the game at Codman. Started as a founding humanities teacher in 2001, and we are now celebrating our 20th year. Huge milestone, great work. Similar to Neighborhood House, we've also evolved over time where they started K-8. We began as a high school, 9 to 12, and about 7 years ago grew out K1 through 8. So we're now serving 345 brilliant students across K1 through grade 12, 100% amazing young people, 99% kids of color, 80% plus low income, right in the heart of Dorchester. I'm proud to be here and talking on challenges, successes, and opportunities because, this is where we are in this moment. I think the fact that COVID is still raging and in the city of Boston and in the Boston area, significant rates really high. I'm looking for that inspiration that I know this amazing panel will help with. And I think about this intensely as professional development, right? We can learn from each other to grow so that we can help our young people. At Codman, we're currently remote 100%. We've invested heavily in having a really strong education model that's delivered that way. So sticking to our roots of a holistic education, health, and the arts, and education and social justice. So we're focused on all of those. We'll continue to do that through a remote model until it's safe. Over to you, Mr. Craig.
Thank you, Tabiti. So I'm Craig Martin, Executive Director of Bridge Boston Charter School. Super excited to be part of this great convening of brilliant minds, hearts, and spirits. I laud Angela, Tabiti, Kate, Kevin, because they are giants in our community. And so, I'm the newest member of the charter community as an executive director, and super excited to be, joining you all. Bridge Boston Charter School is in the heart of Roxbury, Massachusetts. We have 340 amazing scholars of intellect, cultural capital, and resilience. We serve a really remarkable community of families who too are great partners in this work. We also are remote at this time, but we do have some of our amazing scholars who join us. They are some of our high needs, scholars who need either support with, special education services. We have some kids who are just challenged by the remote learning experience, and so sometimes we just need a little TLC, and they come on by, and we do to give them the love that they need. We have an incredible staff as well who are doing some remarkable work to ensure our remote learning community is going strong. We do have some of my staff members who are joining right now, just so that they can see what I'm wearing. No, just joking. But I will say this, I feel like Bridge Boston was made for this because, it's always that, our communities always experiencing challenges because we serve a Black and Brown community, but we also rise, because of this. And so we have the opportunity to share, additional ways that we have, are conquering some of the small things with great small wins and some joy. And I'll talk more about that soon. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, all four of you. So let's get to the first question. So good to hear about your schools. So let's start with success. I think it's important that we start with success at this point. Recently, there was a Globe article in that highlighted some of the real world issues that are affecting teachers. It was an interesting article, and how teachers are adapting during the pandemic. And it seemed like they were getting very creative in their abilities. So what is happening what do you see that's being transformed in your own schools that are leading to success? And so I'd like each of you to take a chance at that question and think about it. And let's look at it from the view of a student as well as a family and teacher. So we'll start with Dr. Allen, and we'll then move on to, I think I'll move to Beatty after that.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. Wow, that's a loaded question, Kevin. There have been several bright spots in this reimagined landscape of school, where we have very quickly pivoted from a 100+ year model of school to a model now that I'm imagining we all might have envisioned when we used to talk about the 21st century. So even though there are decades between the historical traditional model and this new model, mostly virtual learning model, we are still, at least at PHA, one of the successes is we are still keeping our students at the center of our decision making, with a laser focus on both their learning and their lives. I heard Beatty reference the whole child. I heard Kate reference care, and Craig talked about TLC. It is virtually impossible for us to ensure that our students learn academically without focusing on their lives, their health and wellness, their social and emotional learning. So one of the things that we have done at PHA, there's a few things, but I'll highlight a couple here. Launching the wraparound services. We've all have made sure that our most vulnerable students are in person and getting the support that they need. The other thing that I'll say, we started our school year off with spending the first 2 weeks in what we called healing-centered engagement, where we were having one-on-one conferences with our students and families with one adult at PHA. That time was critical because we hadn't seen our students since last March. We needed to take the time to assess how are they doing, right? Proactively plan and identify what are the resources and needs that they need at home for successful learning. So those are a couple of things. And then the last, I would say, thing of success or highlight that I like to illuminate is the technology that we have, the platforms and tools that have allowed us to allow our students to have more space for creative voice and choice. And we're still trying to figure that out, but that I would also say is a success.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Sure.
Tabiti, why don't we feed off of that, and let's do some comparisons here. We hear about what's successful going on at you during this pandemic, which is really, it's really hard to judge at the end of the day what this is going to look like. So Tabiti, take us there.
Yeah, I appreciate the question because it does force us to look at where we can build on strength, and then take that glass half full approach. And I think, it's true for the leaders in this call that we spend a lot of our days dealing with the challenges, right? And that's the thing that we mostly focus on. So, I've been really proud of our community. It's an amazing group of educators who work at Codman Academy, and they have been busting their behinds to provide the best possible educational experiences for our young people, even through this remote model. I think for many of them, this is like teaching year one, right? Because this is not how we were trained to educate young people. We also have not had the experience of delivering content, curricula, ideas to children who we want to be in person with, right? So they're doing that from afar. Our educators, I think, work their tails off to lead to these successes. We have all these tools. Dr. Allen just spoke about this, all these amazing tools we didn't have before. Zoom, okay, I can't use it. I clearly was muted when I was trying to talk, but our teachers can do a much better job than I did just now. And Seesaw and Pear Deck and all of these tools that we didn't have prior that we have now that we are learning to master. What does that do for us for the future is that it gives us these handrails so that when we are in person again, which is inevitable, those vaccines are coming, we can now have this remote experience that can happen for young people from school, right? And so we'll be able to serve more young people with these tools. I think it's also true from the student perspective that they're going to be able to have that in. And we see some of our young people actually doing better with this one-on-one or small group instruction than they were in classrooms. So I think that's positive. I've been really proud of the leadership that our team has had across the board in deepening parent communication, especially at the older grades. We have all of these teachers who are used to working and talking to 14, 15, 16-year-olds on their own, who are now talking to families in a much deeper way. And I think that's going to be beneficial for the future. And then finally, we've continued to have our community meetings that are for the high schoolers happening weekly, for our lower school and middle school students that are happening every month. And they're just joyous. There was one this morning that started off with a chicken noodle dance led by Kalisha, our lead dance teacher, and just joy. And that also was heartwarming to me because, everyone's in their homes. We had homes, and then we had this dance experience and other celebrations that were happening around education and things that they were learning. So continuing patterns and traditions is also a piece of what feels successful, even though it's not in person.
Thanks to BD. Craig.
Thank you. So at Bridge Boston Charter School, I honestly believe that our extraordinary educators are really the nation's superheroes in these extraordinary times, because they have taken a brick and mortar learning experience and made it a virtual love offering, right? And so our young people who, yes, the odds are stacked against Black and brown young people every day, but our staff is going above and beyond to make sure our young people have the tools they need in hand in order to access teaching and learning. We're trying to battle against inequity, so we're trying to make sure we have hotspots. We're making sure we put devices in hand. And just in case, and this is just a small plug, we were in the Globe, right? We had this thing called Bridge Boston Food Truck that we're still running. And so we actually are providing sumptuous farm to table meals every week. So every kid gets a box this size and full with 5 breakfasts, 5 lunches, snacks, a gallon of milk so that every scholar that we serve, that hunger will not be an impediment to their ability to actually thrive. And so we're super, you're funny. And that's super exciting. Like this week, our kids are getting pepperoni pizzas and I think lasagnas. So they're actually we're not talking about sandwiches and PB&J. We're talking about real meals. Additionally, we're seeing our kids showing up. 93% of our students are showing up on average every day for learning. Staff retention is also incredibly high. There are some people who would have crumbled under the force of this pandemic, both pandemics, as Dr. Allen said, but we actually have not lost a single staff member who is teaching our young people. They are in it because they recognize that their involvement, their engagement, their presence is so critical at this time, that the relationships that they're forming, even virtually, are critical to our kids' ability to thrive, not just in this moment, but exponentially, down the line as they grow to be great human beings who are going to be the leaders of our world. So I'm super excited by the energy and tenacity of my staff, by the resilience of our families who are showing up and showing out. So they're participating in activities and games. We have resiliency groups, social emotional learning check-ins for everyone across the community. And we also are doing the hard work to just kind of nestle in. Because we realize that this is not going to be defining of us. And if I say nothing else, and the last thing I'm gonna say is the great partnership. I know, Kevin, I know, but you gave me the mic. You shouldn't have done that. The other thing that I think is really
I'm
amazing
about to shut it off. That's okay.
is the partnership with leaders who I'm surrounded with. Like this, because we're coming together as communities, I think that the broader community is better for it.
Thank you, Craig. And we all want one of those boxes for ourselves. So I can't wait till all participants will get one as well. Kate, thank you very much, Craig. Kate, why don't you now begin?
Sure, and Craig, I'm super energized just hearing you speak about that. So thank you. I'm just going to echo a lot of themes that others have already said. We started our school year realizing over the summer, everybody had been working so incredibly hard throughout the spring to make this pivot. And, literally, I remember it like it was yesterday, and yet it also feels like years ago based on how much has happened since then. March 12th, we realized that we had to take action, and March 13th, we made the announcement to close our schools, and by the following, that was a Friday, by the following Tuesday, we were distributing meals and technology and getting work into students' hands, and that pace was relentless all throughout the spring, and we were making a lot of mistakes, but we were getting certain things right, and we've continued, as all of the schools on this panel have, to iterate on that work. Over the summer, we tried to step back and say, like, what really matters most so that we can lean in and prioritize our time as leaders and teachers within the organization. And so we prioritize safety, equity, engagement, and connection. And I hear so much of that when I listen to other leaders on this call, because I think those themes seem like they are true for all of our organizations in many different ways. And I think for me, a couple of the successes I would say actually have to do with people seeing the integration of those things, particularly, obviously safety has to be first and foremost, and we're talking, primarily about physical and health safety, but also emotional safety. And I think, I was a lower school teacher at the beginning of my career and went on to teach at the middle school for many years. But some of the integration here comes very naturally for elementary school educators, the relationship between engagement and connection and equity. And in middle school, and this was true for me as a math teacher, content becomes king, and that's even more true at the high school level. And I think one of the successes actually born of necessity is that in order to get students to truly feel and be welcomed and belong and engage in this remote way, building that connection, whether it's through those in-person opportunities where possible or other ways of interacting, is just causing all of us to get creative and to bring that into the classroom experience at all levels, but increasingly so at the middle and the high school levels. And I think that is something that is really impactful and going to make a big difference moving forward, including when we're back together in person.
Thank you, Kate. That's a nice segue to talk about our next area, which is challenges. 2 weeks ago, Governor Baker had a press conference, and he announced his desire to have students return to in-person schooling. And today, Commissioner Riley talked about testing for 134 schools. So there seems to be a push to get the kids back into schools. But as urban schools, I'd like you to answer this question. How does Governor Baker's comment resonate with you and the reality of opening your school? I'd like to start with Tabiti on this one, if you don't mind.
Kevin, if you don't
I mean,
mind, would
yeah.
you repeat the quote?
Well, it's not a quote. It's Governor Baker had a press conference, and he had a desire to get back to in-person schooling. And my question is, how does Governor Baker's comment resonate with you and the reality of opening up your school?
Thanks. I thought you had pulled a line there. I thought I missed it, but yeah, it is a really hard time to be in education, period. It is really difficult to make the right decisions about what to do for your individual school community within the context of a larger city, the larger state. And it is really difficult balancing all the different needs, right? We know that the virus is in charge. What we don't know, we don't have a consensus on what science to listen to, or what political leaders to follow with regards to implementation or interpretation of that science. And so I will say that it was difficult to hear the governor explain that schools are relatively safe, that our communities need to move to in-person primarily, and that needs to happen immediately. It was difficult to hear that because in our community in Dorchester, where our school is, well, all we've seen is an upward slope in virus transmission in our neighborhood, to the point where at 13, 14% in the community, when BPS had said they were going to close schools at 4%. We're now in Dorchester at 14. That was at the same time that we were hearing the governor say, get back to in-person learning, do it immediately. It was also difficult, given that we had developed a plan over a long period of time, over months, based on the prior guidance, and had been executing against that plan. So where I'm sitting now as a leader is in doing the very best I can to meet all of these different priorities. I think many of the folks on this call are doing the same thing. And for us, what that means is being really thoughtful about how to deliver a really strong education. And for us, that's remote. And while we're doing that, because we do want to be back in person, and we be back in person as soon as possible, while we're doing that, we're also going to be planning for that eventual future when we're able to be back in person in a safe way, and bringing back small groups of young people as we can. So continuing with that plan that we had prior, following the guidance that the mayor's put out and that Chief Martinez has put out in the city, and moving that work forward. I have a call to any public officials to align on that, right? So that we're not, as school leaders and teachers and students and families, getting caught in the middle where the guidance from different public officials are different. We would love to have clarity there so that we can be clear with our communities, who frankly are not clear because we're not clear because they're not clear. So that's how I've responded so far. I'm hopeful for more.
I want to follow up. To be, if the others don't mind, with you also are the president of the Mass Charter School Association. Do you think that feeling is the same throughout the Commonwealth with mass charter schools and schools in general, or do you think that's maybe restricted to just a few schools?
Yeah, I love it.
Just briefly, what's your sense? And then I'll go to Kate.
I'll do it quick. And it's one of the beautiful things about the charter movement in the state of Massachusetts is that it is entrepreneurial. It is different in that each school has their own way, and that many of our schools, with their own ways, have been incredibly successful. We're one of the strongest, if not the strongest, charter sector in the whole country, right? What's tricky about that is that also means that people want to go their own way, right? You're herding cats in a lot of ways. And so, to be honest and be real, there isn't a full sort of common, this is how everyone is responding to these directives. I can say that amongst the leaders within the Boston community who I've spoken to, that it is a common response that I'm giving forward. It's different in different communities across the state. And I think that is one of the places where I want to give credence, is that we got to be more nuanced in the way in which we're putting policy in place to allow for different communities to respond in different ways. So that's my short version, Kevin.
So Kate, I'm going to switch it up. I'm going to go to Angela, if that's okay. So Angela, following up on what Tabiti just said, I'd like to hear your response, because you're not in Boston and you have kids from all over as a regional school. Could you just give a little bit of response on that?
Yeah, absolutely, Kevin. So one of the things that I think it is important to illuminate here is our students at PHA are from 43 different communities. We are a regional charter school situated in Cambridge and Somerville. However, the commonality amongst all of the schools on this call is we largely serve Black and Brown students. And this is one thing that has been absent completely, in my view, from the conversation at the federal level and at the state level. There is not an acknowledgement of the impact of COVID and communities of color in schools. So while everyone is going their own way, what keeps me up at night as a almost, I'm aging myself here, but I will. Nearly 30 years in this field that I have remained invested and committed to is that while people are moving right along, and because of the collision of COVID and people of color, the students who are going to be and are currently being the most negatively impacted long term are those students in urban districts, the Black and Brown students. What would be great if that was taken into account and we had some universal, so while we are all trying to figure out things on our own with some state guidance, it would be even better if we had some universal assessments to determine where is the COVID slide. My concern is that it will be years before we're able to actually identify where our students have lost. Now, while we are trying to hold them and move them along, we would be remiss not to recognize there is some learning loss happening. So I would like to talk about that as opposed to all the moving targets that school leaders largely, at least I can speak for myself, school leaders largely have been managing all the plans, remote learning, hybrid learning. All of those plans were required in August. I think most school leaders hadn't imagined, at least I did not, that we would be running two concurrent plans. That wasn't the plan, but that's what's happening. And so I would love for us to think about, I mean, when we talk about guidance, how do we support two plans? How do we support the learning loss? So that's my response to that. But there are lots of other challenges, but I'll leave it at that so my colleagues can jump in.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go to Craig and then Kate. Kate, I'll have you wrap this up because I want to hear how your view from a person who's not a person of color, and how you see this, but he also runs a school with overwhelming numbers of children of color. Craig, take a couple of minutes to address it. Thank you.
I echo much of what Taditi and Dr. Allen have stated. I think about W.E.B. Du Bois, and I think about James Baldwin, who talks about the two-ness, of being, an African-American, first, and then you're an education leader as well. And the critical decisions we are constantly being asked as leaders in our community to make decisions on. We know our young people need us. They physically need to be in our presence, that our kids need, when they sit in front of us, they're with us. It just, things are going to be better. Even with all of the challenges they face, we know that they're more likely to be safe for 8 hours. We know that they'll be fed. We know that they'll have really great educators in front of them. We know those things. But we are in these conditions of the pandemics of racism and and COVID. And so for me as a member of the community, I would love to be able to figure out how do I bring more young people to bring more people to campus, but I also don't want to put more of our families in harm's way. So I'm consistently torn because I know education is liberation, but I also understand the challenges of trying to make sure our kids are physically safe as well. And so I am consistently, at war internally about how do I make sure that, if nothing else, we create the most equitable opportunities for young peoples and families to have what they need. And if we can do that, then I want to see on the other side, how are we ensuring that housing security is actually also in place? How do we make sure that there's still food subsidies and other dollars at the table to make sure that what I can do as a school leader, I can help and ensure. But the other things that families need, employment, housing, economic stability, unemployment, coverage, all of those things. How are we also making sure that those things are also accessible and available to our families? Because that's the other side that we, are also considering as leaders who are leading communities of color, who are hardest hit and underserved and and always overwhelmed in the midst of this. So those are some of the things that I am definitely wrestling with, and continue to seek partnership with our officials on in trying to navigate this.
Thank you, Craig. That was excellent. All three answers have been excellent. Now, Kate, I want you to, I know you've listened to what the others have said, but you are in Dorchester. You are one of the older schools in this and have been around the charter school movement for a very long time. So how do you look at what the governor has said and juxtapose that with is being said by your colleagues?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much nuance and a lot has already been stated. So I don't want to be redundant, but I would say that, it's not a one size fits all model. And we have some students who struggled, before COVID struck, they struggled to be inside the school buildings. And Thabita, you mentioned this earlier, like some of them are thriving right now because if I'm a young person who, struggles with self-regulation in the midst of a busy classroom and a school environment where there are a lot of things going on, it might be true that learning from home with all the small group supports and the special education services and other things that are going on remotely might actually be better. And we see some students who are thriving. We also see whole groups of students, and I would say this is particularly true of our English language learners, that I don't think enough conversation is taking place about. And for our English language learners who are used to being immersed in a full day experience where they're surrounded not only by English language development classes and sheltered English immersion programs, but also just the everyday interactions with peers on the playground and in the dining hall and all those kinds of things. And it's hard to recreate that on Zoom, right? So, there is no one size fits all here. And first and foremost, as it relates to communities of color like ours at Neighborhood House and my colleagues here on the call, we have to be thinking, we know what is happening with the virus and we see what is happening with health disparities and we see what's happening, with the economic impact and fallout here. And I think there's this other piece, and Angela, you spoke at the beginning about the twin pandemics, and Craig and others have referenced it over the course of this meeting. We have to look at ourselves as institutions and think about the ways in which we're talking about systemic inequity and systemic racism, but also looking at institutional inequity and institutional racism within our own organizations and begin to dismantle that and have much more honest conversations about it. And so I think all of that is happening all at once. As it relates to your specific question, Kevin, about the governor and the mandate, I think I'll go back to comments that were made earlier about various officials sort of sending different messages, and that can be complex to navigate. But I think that the Boston Charter Alliance and more broadly other charter leaders in Cambridge, like Dr. Allen and other communities that I'm interacting with, feel like we do have the mandate and the support from our peers and from the association to navigate this. I mean, you see it even in the sense that there are slightly different models that each of the 4 schools here today are representing. And I think we just have to with all the new data that's coming at us and all the information, which looks very different now than it did a month ago, and significantly different now than it did back in March, we have to just constantly be taking it all in and evaluating and being flexible. And that's what we do best as charter schools.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate your answers in this area. I think we all hope the audience is really understanding the difficulties that each of you face. We were saying earlier before we all got on the program here itself, really addressing how you're feeling. And so and we don't really always answer it, as Angela said, honestly. We say, we're all doing fine. We're all doing fine. And really, we're struggling. We're human too. You're not, we all look at you as superheroes, but you are human. So I want to go to opportunities. And this is to wind in success, challenges, but now there are these opportunities that lie ahead for each of you. I believe with every challenge, there is an opportunity. And so an opportunity for us to improve the education of our children. What opportunities do you believe lie ahead in education for your school and for other educators and other schools throughout our Commonwealth? And I want you to really take some time to think about this opportunity, because you've got all these challenges and you talked about your successes. Now, let's really get to it. We need some answers. Craig, we're going to start with you, and then we're going to move on, and we'll have Angela wrap it up. So go ahead, Craig.
Wow. Opportunity. So our school theme is Love is the Bridge. And
I love that.
And so I think about Dr. Maya Angelou, who says, love recognizes no barriers. It jumps hurdles, leaps fences, penetrates walls to arrive at its destination, full of hope. And so there's an opportunity for us to strengthen our relationships broadly. I think that we need to really do a deep case study on what are the best parts of this moment and make sure we lift that up and continue to do that. So do those things so that doesn't get lost in the fold. Our teachers are utilizing, tools and resources and approaches they may never have actually adopted. We have young people who, as Kate mentioned, who felt they felt more comfortable in this environment than they actually have in classrooms. Why is that? What is it that we're going to lift from that? And what are the deep partnerships that we have amongst each other that we want to go ahead and rise up and continue to strengthen as we do this work. I've never worked so hard with so many people over the course of this last 9 months to really lean in, name my levels of discomfort, learn and just say, hey, what are you doing in this part of the work that can help me? And I'm leaning in a way I've never leaned in before. And I'm so grateful, because I probably would not have done it if this COVID experience had not actually taken place. So I'm incredibly grateful to everyone here.
Mm-hmm. So Craig, I really love that comment about for the school is love is the bridge and partnerships, and how COVID has really forced you to think differently of how, as a new executive director, how Bridge Boston is now going to operate when we're all back. So Kate, I'd like to go back to you now. You've been around, so I'm going from the youngest to the one with a little bit more experience.
A few more gray hairs.
And definitely a few more gray hairs. You didn't have those 24 years ago. But would you kind of look at the opportunities? So what are the opportunities for Neighborhood House, and also in the city of Boston and the colleagues? I know Neighborhood House has a history of working with other schools. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, I think, broadly, I would just say, and I've heard themes of this throughout today's panel, that we are in a very disruptive moment and a moment of tremendous disequilibrium, right? And I was reading Octavia Butler recently, and this idea of embracing change, and sort of the only constant is change. And I think we have to think about how do we lean into change? I love what you just said, Craig, about leaning in. And one of the biggest things for us at Neighborhood House is kind of coming back to our roots a little bit. I mean, Kevin, when you founded Neighborhood House and when I came on in the early years, I was reminded the other day that we were a teeny tiny staff. Our whole staff could sit around, in one small conference room in a semicircle and have a staff meeting. And now we are a staff of 150 people serving 800 students. And one of the changes that has come about through this is reminding us about the importance of that distributed leadership and reminding us about amplifying and elevating, creating space for so many voices. Because I know for me, the opportunity back in those days to be able to lean in and try things and be given the space to take leadership, became a part of my trajectory and helped me to become where I am today. And so as we grew as an organization, I don't want to say we lost that, but maybe we did lose some of those threads a little bit, and we're leaning back into it. And I think that creates space for the next generation of leaders and for empowerment of our educators. So that's tremendous. And I'm already really seeing the effects of that. I'm really excited about it. And then the other thing that I would say is one of my leaders right now is a sixth grade English teacher, Victor Terry, who has been with us for 3 years and is now co-chairing our DEI steering committee. And he and I are working very closely together. And he was talking the other day about the degree to which we are breaking down walls and barriers between home and school by virtue of the fact that students are learning from home. And so sometimes, especially at the youngest grades, that the parent's sitting right next to you, and at other times you might not know, but they're just outside of the frame of Zoom. And I actually think that's incredibly powerful in so many ways, in terms of how it can connect and strengthen the bond and the understanding and the mutual collaboration. So I'm very eager to see how we continue those elements moving forward, even when we're all back together in person.
Okay, I love how you repeat what Craig has said, lean in, and and how we crave for the good old days, which will hopefully be back again. Tabiti, this is a question for you now, is what's going to transform Codman as you go into the stage when all these kids are back? It's a great school. By the way, I visited all these schools. I know all these schools. They're great schools, by the way. I hope everybody has an opportunity in the audience to visit these schools. They're wonderful places. Not now, but when COVID is over. Tabiti.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. I've also been to all of the schools here and admire the work that's being done. I think when we're at our best, an opportunity amongst us is to steal from the best, right? So there's no shame in stealing great ideas from school leaders, from teachers, from students. I'll say this, over at Bridge, they have the motto about love, which, by the way, brilliant love. I mean, who can be mad at that, right? At Codman, we have a motto, and it is to learn, to lead, and to serve. And so I was thinking about this question about opportunity from those three frames. One of the things that I think has been in the learning sphere that's been really powerful is that on Zoom classrooms, connected to these wonderful tools with our students, everything takes a little bit longer. And so we find that we're trying to get through a lesson that we would have done in person in an hour, and it's taking 2 sessions. One of the great things at the end of those 2 sessions, we have more students who are with us, right, and ready to keep rolling. One of the downsides is that means we'll need 2 years to get the level of growth that we wanted. I want to be honest here and say, we are stuck in a model that prioritizes speed over learning, where we have an opportunity to decouple mastery of knowledge from age cohorts. There's no reason we should be speeding students, human beings, who are learning at very different rates through the same gauntlet at the same time and expect them to come out the same place at the end. It doesn't make any sense. It is illogical, but it is what we do. If we can decouple that idea of mastery of knowledge versus this age and speed, that's a brilliant, beautiful thing that we can do going forward. In the leading sphere, Kate was talking a lot about the student leadership. I love that. And that has felt really powerful for me at Codman this year as well. We have so many great teams of people doing beautiful work. Just the other day, one of our teachers, Kelsey, said, one of the things I love about working here at Codman is when I have an idea about trying to do something, I can literally just go. No one's going to tell me no. In fact, I asked you all and you say, yes, that's a great idea. Go do it. And I think that that's part of what we're about. And that is an opportunity if we can help to unleash the genius in our team. And I want to say that students are part of our team. They have brilliant ideas, right? We have students currently working on projects where they're building out green spaces in the back of the school building and trying to figure out how to, make it so that it's a year-round project. So it's not just during the summer, they can grow fruits and vegetables and link that to the curriculum. So there are these wonderful ideas that are in place. We got to get better at investing in our leaders, and we got to make sure that we grow them from within so that we can keep growing this education system. The third piece around service, and we've talked about this a little bit, but I just want to highlight it for a moment. In the spring, when we were at the height of this resurgence of the civil rights movement, and we were talking a lot about Black Lives Matter, we had this outpouring, people in the streets, people in our school building having conversations, talking, tears, real engagement, conversation has died down a lot since then. I think it is an opportunity for us to tap into the fervor of that movement, to be honest about the realities of Black people still getting killed on a regular basis by police, to be real about that, and to say, let's not have it be a flash in the pan thing. Let's have it be deeply embedded into our curricula. Let's talk about social justice. Let's make it so that the products coming out of our classrooms are actually about changing the world and about adjusting the status quo for the better. We have an opportunity to do that. We don't want to lose sight of that. About that, we have to deepen that work. And so I'm proud to be in an organization that does that. I'm proud of the leaders on this call who I've spoken to about these things in the past. And I believe that we have it in our power to make those changes going forward when we come out of this moment.
Thank you to Beatty. I really want to thank all of you for this, asking us to lean in and think about the twin pandemic and where Angela started all of this. And I'm going to come back to Angela now. And Angela, I want you to kind of now wrap us up. And I'm also asking the audience, we may need an extra 5 minutes. So we give some time to Angela to ask this question. So if you wouldn't mind, you may want to stay on. It's a great group. So Angela, the same question.
Yeah.
Feeding off your colleagues. Take your time.
Sure, Kevin. Thanks again. So I appreciate that segue, time. Oftentimes, educators do not have the time they need to be creative, to be innovative, to be engineers, to create the new. We follow the lockstep of what has been in place for 100 years or more. This is an opportunity for us to open the doors for transformative reform and disrupt decades of educational practices that generally have not served marginalized communities. So let's think about some of the advantages and the flexibilities that we are seeing now. That would be great if we were able to continue those post-COVID. And we've always known that it was better. For example, schedules. We've heard for years that it is better if high school students start their day at 9 or 10 o'clock. Many of us are seeing tremendous success in our high school students because we are giving them the flexibility to customize and choose their schedule. Schedule is one. Another example are teens. Many of the folks on this call have Black and brown children and white children as well who are working, whose work is not to go out and buy the things they want. They are working to provide their families with the things they need. Allowing our students to have flexibility and choice in their schedules for school, I really do hope that we don't go back. I think the schedule of in-person, online, hybrid, while we are trying to figure that all out, when you give the brilliant minds of our teachers and our students and our leaders the time that is needed to really support all of these models, they will be successful. But I hope we don't go back to just one. That's an opportunity. Another opportunity is wraparound services. All of us have talked about providing resources for our most vulnerable and neediest students. That includes mental health. We've known this for years at schools. We should provide that to all of our community members. The pedagogical shifts are another opportunity. All of these tools that our teachers have embraced them so quickly. But if we give them the time, we will likely see how they are leveraging these new tools for student-to-student interaction, student-to-teacher interaction, connection. I think I've heard a few people talk about how we are now better positioned than ever before to engage our families. I can say for sure, I have not been in a room with all my families like I have via Zoom. I've had over 150 families in one room invested in their students' education. That tool of Zoom helps us to demystify this belief that Black and brown families don't have time for their kids. That is not true. We have to create the structures and the time for our families to invest and partner with us. We all know that if we have community partnerships, family partnerships, and we're all in it together, and even with each other, this isn't the first time we've talked on this call. We have all been seeking each other out as resources. This is what all school leaders are doing. When we are all working together and working collaboratively to solve some of the biggest challenges that we've ever faced in education, I have no doubt that our students will succeed and weather the storm.
Thank you. Well, friends, we're getting near the end here. And like I said, I'll ask a couple of more minutes from the audience. They seem to still be there. I want to thank you all for all of this. And I think you're creating a different movement of collaboration. And I certainly want to thank Dr. Allen and her staff for bringing us all together. This was her brainchild to bring us all together. And can we just give her a little round of applause here
Thank you,
for
guys.
the kind of work that she's doing?
Thank you.
And I really want to thank her for that. And in the background is Anya Bressler, who has been keeping me on track. I think I'll take her with me wherever I go because she's pretty good at this. So, and I also want to thank the audience for coming and listening to each of us here. And thank you again. And Angela, you want to wrap us up, bring us home? One final thing that you want to say to the audience?
I think the final thing that I will say is let's seize the moment. Let's seize the moment.
Okay, beautiful. Tabitha Brown, Greg Martin, Kate Scott, Angela Allen, thank you all so much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks, my friends.
It was fun.